Welcome to this Killick Explains video, and welcome to the last one in my How to Generate Income series. This is number 4, and I'm going to talk about property. So in case you're wondering what the first 3 were all about, that was cash, bonds and shares. So let's talk about property. Now, why do we need to generate income? And property is one way to do it. Well, there are 2 reasons basically. The cost of living is rising, so keeping up with inflation is increasingly challenging in day-to-day terms. And of course, there are people out there who will be dialing down work or have stopped work and need an income for the simple reason that their employer isn't providing it and they're no longer self-employed. So, how are we going to do it? Well, property is one option. And let me just say, first of all, there is more than one way to do it. I'll talk about the pros and cons in a moment. There is direct. Now, if you're relying on it for income, it's probably going to be some sort of buy-to-let arrangement. But there is another way, and this gives you exposure potentially to commercial property as well. It's got its pros and cons, and that's the real estate investment trust. For those people thinking, oh, hang on a minute, what I'm basically saying is you can either buy and own property direct with all the ups and downs of doing that, or there are exchange-traded shares, effectively, that give you a property exposure. So I wouldn't like anyone watching the video to think there's only one way to do it. Now, what are the advantages of property as an asset? And people out there will probably know this already. It's tangible. People quite like it because they think I can go and kick it. I can go and meet the tenants, all right? And that is a perceived advantage, only perceived, arguably. Yields can be fairly decent. I mean, if you're a landlord that knows what they're doing, rental up to a certain point can keep pace with inflation. Recently, people have been able to crank up rent, although there's a point, of course, where tenants can no longer afford it. It's reasonably well understood, or people think it is. They think, I know what property is. I mean, I live in one, for heaven's sake. How difficult can it be? Come back to that in a moment. All right. And on the subject, coming back to that in a moment, the advantages are in some ways the weaknesses. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, tenant management is a headache if you've never done it. Why is it a headache? Tenants break stuff. They move out. It can be hard to find good ones. They don't pay rent at all or on time. Yes, I know you can take deposits off them and so on, but there are quite a few headaches you have with property you don't have with bonds or cash or shares. I'm not trying to put you off, just saying be aware. The tax breaks are not fantastic. In fact, they're almost non-existent. In fact, the government is trying to make owning buy-to-let properties harder and harder. So you can't put these things in an ISA, a buy-to-let property, for example. You can't put them in a SIP. All right. There are ways of investing in property via tax wrappers, but it's via the sort of share route I mentioned, not dumping property direct inside a tax wrapper. Property is illiquid, so yes, you can kick it, but also you can't sell bits of it very easily. It's not like a share portfolio where you could in theory break a bit off and sell it. It's either you sell the whole thing, usually, or you don't. Okay, so all of those things are reasons to be a little bit careful. It's not fungible in that way that other assets can be. It's not easily divisible, and that might be a problem if you need money back quickly. Now, what are the tricks, therefore, to successfully running property as an asset class? Experience is vital, I would suggest. This is no market for novices, especially not at the moment, not with the tax rules changing, not with the government eyeing up ways to squeeze more money out of second property owners and so on. Rents may or may not keep pace with inflation. There's a limit on what tenants can realistically afford to pay. Okay. Long-term gains can be okay on property, but be careful because the capital gains tax rules are about to change and not in the favour of buy-to-letters, for example. So lots of things to think about. It's quite a complex beast. Sounds simple, not so simple when you get into the detail. Now, what are we going to use as a source of income apart from something like buy-to-let? People might be sitting there thinking, you don't need buy-to-let, Tim. You can do equity release. You can release cash from your own main home. You can, but watch out. It's expensive. Okay, and I would personally look at other options first, and I'll mention a guide at the end of this video where you can find out more about why I've just said those 2 things. So what are the rules? What are the rules of property, if you like? Aiming to own your main home is a good objective. We're a home-owning country. Psychologically, we like it. The rental market's not brilliant for long-term tenants, so we've got no problem with that. An investment strategy that gets you to that point in life is a good one. If you can afford to help your kids and other family members get on the ladder, why wouldn't you try and do that? Okay, but beyond that, owning second homes, possibly as a holiday home if you can afford to do that and want to split retirement. Yeah, that can be valid if you know what you're doing, if you're happy to put the time in. But buy to let, pure investment in property, I'll be pretty careful. Okay, the landscape is shifting against it right now, all right, and you need to be mindful of the work involved and some of the risks that attach to property that don't, if I'm being honest, attach to some of the other investments I've mentioned in this series. Big topic. So for further information, including some basic guides to actually buying property, if you're thinking, gosh, you missed a lot here, Killick.com/learn is my video library. Then you've got Confidant. We do have occasional property articles in there. That's the quarterly magazine. That would be editor@killick.com. And if you're wondering about that equity release stuff, because I did fly over it, well, there are some guides. One in particular is about generating an income once you stop work, if you like, and that is also available. It's got a grey cover. It's quite a meaty one. Editor@killick.com.